Hello. Let us resume our lecture on the last four texts from the Anglo-Saxon elegiac poetry. In my previous lectures, I have completed the Wanderer, the Seafarer, the Wife's Complaint, Widsith, and what are the basic resurgences that can be considered as very much important to consider them as elegiac poetry. Uh, in the previous discussion, I have mentioned about the minstrel and scop. That means why these are very important, why or how in their words, in their songs, we can find the references of uh, the good situations of any particular country and how these have been completely being negated in the present scenario. Uh, so let us begin with the Deor's Lament. In Deor's Lament, similarly, you will find another picture of a section scop. Okay, and not in glad wandering, but in sorrow. Why such a kind of a sorrow? Because you will find that he belonged to a household of his chieftain. And what happens that and he was happy until he finds himself supplanted by a rival named Heoranda. Heoranda spelling Heorrenda. Now, what happens to be a truth, you see, that in a typical kind of a household where such a kind of a rivalry, it was very common in literature. And you will find here, but the singer, that means the speaker of this particular poem, he beats himself to take heart against the hazards of life, and a note of stoical tone is the dominant tone of this particular poem, though the fundamental focus of this particular poem is based on the kind of a rivalry that is going on between Heoranda and the speaker of this particular poem. But at the same time, you will find that as these are the classical texts, here you will find the optimum focus is given on the moralistic perspectives. So the dominant tone of this particular poem is a matter of stoicism. Deor has this experience and comforts himself in a way by recalling various examples of men who have suffered more than himself. Deor is much more poetic than Widsith, I should say, and is a perfect lyric of the Anglo-Saxon period here. The next poem is The Husband's Message. What happens, that the husband's message belongs to the particular group of Anglo-Saxon elegies that have been treated as the elegiac monologues. Okay, whereas in case of the Seafarer, we have found that there was a kind of a conversation is going on between the experienced sailor and the inexperienced sailor. That means the matter of dialogue was there. But here, in case of in case of the husband's message, you will find that it is a kind of a monologue that have been treated. In this poem, you will find the speaker is the piece of wood, not any human being, and on which actually the letters are carved. Okay, the letters from the husband who is not present at now. So it first tells the wife and its own love story, as well as his as the life story, and then goes on to speak the message now carved on it. The husband reminds the wife of her earlier vows, right? And tells her that he has been driven from her by a feud, that is a kind of a conflict, and bids her to join him across the sea. Now, what happens, that though you can find in this particular poem that a husband's message, there are ample references of a kind of, say, personal grief and suffering and a kind of a message that had been conveyed by the husband in the form of the wood. But at the same time, you can find some metaphoric discussion, some allegorical representation can also be made. That is, across the sea can also refer to the barrier between life and death, and meeting between the husband and message, the future meeting. It can also represent the meeting after death, obviously. That means the life hereafter. So and the particular kind of what you can trace from this particular poem, it can also represent, it can also signify that there was a kind of a conflict was going on between the husband and the clan members or so, or members of the clan, and eventually the husband is dead. It can be also interpreted in this way. The husband is dead, and his last words have been curved on the tree, and the tree begins to speak, and there it has been written that the future meeting between the husband and wife will be taken place after the life Okay, that is the say crossing the sea and so. The next poem is Ulf and Idwasa. It was a love story, but it is a kind of a triangular love that have been incorporated. Ulf and Idwasar is a dramatic monologue, as you can see. That means the speaker is single, but you can find that there is another silent listener is waiting to hear, of which only a fragment of 19 lines are in Exeter book. Right? It, for all its obscurity of the situation described, expresses an intense romantic passion in such a way where we find a tiny prick of pain. Ulf is the woman's outlawed lover, right? And Idwasa is her hated husband, or at least the man with whom, against her will, she is forced to live. So you can identify a kind of a triangular love story is being incorporated here, and the famous passionate cry, Wolf, my longings for thee have made me sick. The rare visits, it was my sorrowful heart, not want of food. These are very touching, obviously. And the last poem, The Ruin, it actually expresses, as you can find from the title of this particular poem, it describes the ruin. So ruin of what? Ruin of a dynasty, ruin of a palace, ruin of a civilization, obviously. So the ruin actually expresses the poet's deep regret at the sight of some buildings which were once massive, right? But now you will find that they have been dilapidated. And this deserted condition evokes a nostalgic melancholy in his mind. This poem is an outcome of the melancholic thought. The poet thinks of the castle and its dwellers, the past events, natural sorrow, loss, or pain that are mixed with this deepest emotion, play a deepest role in his thought, in his emotion, and as a result, the poem touches the culmination of the Anglo-Saxon glory. So fundamentally, this is very common in Anglo-Saxon period. Wherever you will find that there are the invaders who are coming, the external pressures are coming, these are actually attacking some particular kingdom, and even in some few days this will be vanished. And whenever we will think of in the scope, at one point he was present, then after 10 years he returns and finds that everything is completely being dilapidated. So these kinds of ruins are everywhere throughout Anglo-Saxon period, because there was not a kind of a truce that was possible at the time, the truce between the dynasties, the truce between the clan members, and so. But eventually, as they are the invaders, they are the warriors. So the battle was evident in everywhere. You see. So ultimately we'll find that these are the important poems that have to be treated as the Anglo-Saxon elegiac poetry, and you will get these poems in translated forms today. And if you have more interest regarding these poetry or regarding these uh, wonderful specimen of Anglo-Saxon elegies, then you can go through the text. Okay, these are available in websites and obviously in the printed form, obviously. So today, up to this, stay tuned and ultimately subscribe this particular channel, and you will get notifications regarding the future activities and endeavors and future lectures on history of English literature, or maybe the other parts of English literature that can help you in your long run. That means in your academic career, or maybe PG courses, UG courses, and at the same time the competitive exam like NET, SET, etc. So today, after this, thank you then.